They are going to hang us, you fool. Hang US. And for what? For your precious premature talk of independence? Quote, the words weren't meant for you, but in the close, damp confines of a ship at sea, secrets have a way of bleeding through the walls. They were just a low rumble from a nearby cabin, a furious whisper that would change everything. Tonight we delve into one of those tiny, overlooked moments in history, where a simple argument becomes the spark for something much larger. A clash of wills on a claustrophobic ship that mirrors the burgeoning revolution itself. It's funny, isn't it? We think of history in terms of grand battles and signed declarations, but so much of it happens in these small, stuffy rooms, driven by egos and exhaustion, fear and feverish hope. Hi guys, and welcome back. It's so good to have you here. We're about to set sail into the hidden currents of 1776, a year that shaped a nation. Picture this. You're swaying gently on a ship, the salty air thick with anticipation, the creak of wood a constant lullaby. You probably won't survive this voyage unscathed. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It truly helps. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far our little community stretches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are Nancy Murphy, a weaver, and the salty tang of the ocean fills your nostrils as you trudge below deck. It's a smell you've come to know intimately over the past 3 weeks, a sharp, clean scent layered over the less pleasant odors of tar, bilge water, and the 100 or so souls crammed into this wooden world. The floor beneath your worn leather shoes is in constant, gentle motion, a perpetual dance with the Atlantic that your stomach has, thankfully, finally accepted. Above, the sky is a brilliant, unforgiving blue. But down here, in the narrow corridor of the passenger quarters, the air is heavy and shadowed, punctuated by the yellow glow of lanterns that swing in time with the ship's roll. You press a hand against the cool, damp wood of the passageway to steady yourself. Your cousin, Thaddeus, sent you below to fetch a blanket from your shared trunk. A simple enough errand. But Thaddeus, with his charming smile and fervent patriotic speeches, never seems to notice the things you do. He doesn't see the way the British sailors watch the colonial passengers, their eyes lingering with a mixture of suspicion and contempt. He doesn't feel the oppressive weight of the unspoken tension that makes every meal a quiet, brittle affair. He is too full of righteous fire to feel the cold dread that sometimes settles in your bones. You, however, feel it all. As a weaver, your life is about noticing threads, how they cross, how they pull, how a single knot can disrupt an entire pattern. And this ship, this voyage, is a loom, set with threads of rebellion and loyalty, stretched to their breaking point. That's when you hear it. It starts as a low murmur from behind the closed door of a private cabin, the one reserved for the delegates from the Continental Congress. You know they're in there. The whole ship knows. Mr. Adams of Massachusetts and Mr. Dickinson of Pennsylvania. 2 of the most important men in America, crammed into a space no bigger than your modest weaving room back in Boston. You slow your steps, your curiosity a hook snagging on the rough-hewn door. You shouldn't listen. A good woman would hurry on, minding her own affairs. But your outgoing nature has always been at war with the insecure voice in your head, and right now, curiosity is winning. You pause, feigning to adjust the buckle on your shoe and lean just a fraction of an inch closer. It is not prudence, John. It is cowardice. The voice is sharp, nasal, and laced with an impatience so profound it seems to vibrate through the very wood. That would be Mr. Adams. You've seen him on deck, a short, stout man with a thunderous expression, pacing as if he could hasten the ship's arrival in France through sheer force of will. A second voice, smoother and more measured, replies, "It is the gravest prudence to avoid a war we cannot win. To sever ties with the crown now, without a single foreign ally, without a properly funded army, is not an act of liberty. It is an act of suicide." That must be Mr. Dickinson. He is a quieter presence, a man whose arguments, they say, are as carefully constructed as a fine piece of silver. Suicide? Adams's voice rises. No longer a murmur, but a clear, biting charge. What do you call our current state? We are subjects in name, but slaves, in fact. Our ports are blockaded, our citizens are fired upon in the streets, and we must bow and scrape to a parliament 3,000 miles away that sees us as nothing more than a source of revenue. I would rather die a free man than live as a well-fed slave in your prudent colonies. Quote, the air in the corridor feels suddenly cold. These are not the polite philosophical debates you've read about in pamphlets. This is raw, visceral, and terrifying. This is the sound of two worlds colliding. And what of the common man, the farmer, the artisan? Dickinson's voice is strained, holding onto its silken quality by a thread. What of the weaver you propose to send into battle against the most powerful army on earth? Your liberty is an abstraction, a philosopher's dream. Their lives are real. Their blood will be real. Quote, your breath catches in your throat, the weaver. He's talking about you, about people like you. You are no longer just an eavesdropper. You are the subject, the pawn in their grand, terrifying game. Your clever mind races, connecting the political theory to the stark reality of your own life. Your hands, calloused from the shuttle and loom, suddenly feel fragile. Your future, which seemed a clear enough path just a month ago, is now a fog of uncertainty. They are going to hang us, you fool! The accusation from Adams is almost a hiss. Hang US, and for what? For your precious, premature talk of independence? You race toward a cliff and call it progress. I am merely asking that we build a bridge first. A bridge to where, John? Back to tyranny? Adams scoffs, a harsh, humorless sound. There is no bridge back. They have burned it. General Gage burned it at Charlestown. The king himself burned it when he rejected our olive branch petition. The only path is forward, through the fire. You feel a presence behind you, and you jolt, spinning around with a gasp. Thaddeus stands there, his handsome face etched with concern. He places a gentle hand on your arm. Nancy? What is it? You look as if you've seen a ghost. He speaks in a normal volume, and a fresh wave of panic washes over you. Did they hear him inside the cabin? The voices abruptly stop. The silence that follows is somehow louder and more menacing than the argument itself. All you can hear now is the rhythmic creak of the ship's timbers and the frantic thumping of your own heart. Did you get the blanket? Thaddeus asks, his charming obliviousness a stark contrast to your terror. You shake your head, unable to form words. You just stare at the cabin door, expecting it to burst open at any moment, expecting the fiery Mr. Adams to appear and accuse you of spying. Let's go, then, Thaddeus says, tugging you gently. It's too stuffy down here. The sea air will do you good. He leads you away from the door, his grip firm and reassuring. But as you take a step, a different door down the corridor swings open. A figure emerges, blocking the narrow passage. It is not Mr. Adams or Mr. Dickinson. It is Captain Ursula Richardson. She is a woman carved from the same tough oak as her ship, with eyes the color of a stormy sea, and hands that look strong enough to haul an anchor. Her face is weathered by sun and salt, and her expression is one of perpetual, hard-working impatience. She is your opposite in every way. Where you feel insecure and adrift, she is the master of this vessel, an anchor of authority. Her gaze sweeps over you and Thaddeus, then lingers on you, a flicker of something sharp and assessing in her eyes. She must have seen you standing by the delegate's door. Passengers should remain in their designated areas, she says, her voice low and steady, carrying an authority that needs no volume. It cuts through the thick air like a sharpened blade. This is not a place for idle loitering. Quote, Thaddeus, ever the charmer, flashes a disarming smile. My apologies, Captain. My cousin was just feeling a bit faint from the rocking. I was seeing to her. Captain Richardson's eyes don't leave yours. They narrow slightly. You feel pinned by her gaze, like a butterfly to a board. She knows. You are certain she knows you are listening. In that moment, the argument between the two great men fades in importance, replaced by a much more immediate and personal threat. The conflict is no longer just behind a closed door. It's standing right in front of you, and it's wondering what you heard. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic drum against the steady, deep rhythm of the ship. Thaddeus's hand is a warm weight on your arm, a grounding presence, but it does little to stop the cold certainty that you have been caught. Captain Richardson's eyes, the color of a gathering squall, hold yours. They are not cruel, not exactly, but they are utterly devoid of softness. They are the eyes of a person who has seen men drown and storms break, and who is unimpressed by a passenger's feigned illness. You can't find your voice. Your clever mind, usually so quick to spin a plausible thread of an excuse, is a tangled mess. It is Thaddeus who speaks, his voice smooth and earnest. Truly, Captain, the air below is quite thick. We were just on our way to the deck. He gestures with his free hand up the companionway, a picture of polite concern. Captain Richardson's gaze does not waver from you. A long moment stretches, filled only by the groaning of timbers. You feel the heat of a blush crawl up your neck, a traitorous signal of your guilt. She saw you. She saw you leaning in, saw you listening. She is the captain of this small, isolated world, and you have broken its unwritten rules. You have peered into a place you do not belong. The deck is for fresh air, she says finally, her voice flat. The corridors are for transit. See that you remember the difference. She doesn't wait for a reply. With a final, lingering look that feels like a physical mark upon your skin, she turns and continues down the passageway, her heavy boots making a firm, authoritative sound on the wooden planks. She disappears into the gloom, but her presence remains, a chill in the air. "Well," Thaddeus murmurs, his charm deflating slightly, "she's a formidable woman." He gives your arm a little squeeze. "Come on, let's leave the ghosts to their arguments." Quote, he doesn't understand. To him, it was a simple reprimand for loitering. To you, it was a warning. You are a loose thread, she has noticed, and you have a sinking feeling she will not forget it. The final 2 weeks of the voyage pass in a haze of quiet anxiety. You keep to yourself, your outgoing nature suppressed by the fear of another encounter with the captain. Her eyes seem to follow you everywhere, from the quarterdeck to the mess. You see her speaking quietly to one of the British sailors, her gaze flicking in your direction. Paranoia, you tell yourself. It's just the close quarters, the endless water, the memory of those angry, powerful voices. But the feeling of being watched, of being known, never quite leaves you. You overheard the birth of a nation's treason, and the ship's captain knows it. Then, one morning, a cry goes up from the crow's nest, "Land ho!" Quote, the words are a magical incantation, breaking the spell of the sea. A collective sigh of relief seems to ripple through the ship. You join the small crowd of passengers at the rail, Thaddeus beside you, his arms slung casually around your shoulders. You squint at the horizon and see it. A smudge of green, low and indistinct, but real. It is the first solid thing you have seen in more than a month. As the ship navigates the wide, placid waters of the Delaware Bay, and then into the river itself, the smudge grows into a coastline of deep green trees and rolling fields. The air changes. It loses its raw, salty edge, becoming thick with the smell of damp earth, sweet grass, and something else, the faint, smoky scent of civilization. When you finally dock in Philadelphia, the transition is a shock to the system. The gangplank deposits you into a world of overwhelming sensation. After the muted palette of the sea and sky, the city is a riot of color. Red brick buildings, the green of market stalls piled high with produce, the varied hues of the crowd's clothing. After the sparse sounds of the ship, creaking wood, snapping sails, the cry of gulls, the noise is a physical assault. Cart wheels clatter on cobblestones. Merchants hawk their wares, men shout in taverns, and underneath it all, a constant, energetic hum of human activity. Isn't it magnificent? Thaddeus bellows over the din, his face alight with an almost boyish glee. He grabs your hand, his grip firm and exciting. "This is it, Nancy! The heart of it all!" Quote, he pulls you into the throng. You feel small and lost, a single thread cast into a vast, chaotic weave. Thaddeus, however, thrives. He is a part of this energy, not consumed by it. He points to the impressive brick facade of the State House, its bell tower reaching for the sky. He greets men in militia uniforms with a hearty clap on the back, exchanging news in clipped, urgent tones you can't quite follow. He is in his element, a charming patriot returned to the center of the cause. You, however, see the things he doesn't. Your weaver's eye trained to spot imperfections, snags on the details. You see a shop with its windows boarded up, a crude Tory scrawled across the wood in white paint. You see a woman in fine silk weeping quietly on a bench as a group of rowdy boys marches past, waving a flag with a coiled snake on it. You see the faces in the crowd, not just the triumphant and the zealous, but the worried, the weary, the profoundly afraid. This magnificent city feels like a powder keg, and Thaddeus is dancing on top of it. You find lodgings in a small boarding house run by a frazzled woman whose husband is off with the Pennsylvania militia. The days leading up to the 4th of July are a blur of heat, humidity, and revolutionary fervor. The city buzzes. Rumors fly like sparks from a blacksmith's forge. The British fleet has been sighted off New York. The king has sent commissioners to treat for peace. The Continental Army is deserting in droves. A Declaration of Independence has been drafted and is being debated. That last rumor proves true. On the 4th, the city erupts. The sound begins in the morning, a low, persistent clang that grows in intensity until it seems to vibrate in your very bones. It's the State House bell, ringing out over the city, a summons and a celebration all in one. People pour out of houses and taverns, their faces flushed with excitement and the summer heat. "You have to see this," Thaddeus insists, pulling you from the relative quiet of your room. "This is history, Nancy. We are living it." Quote. He leads you to the State House yard, where a massive crowd has gathered. The air is thick with sweat and the smell of gunpowder from celebratory musket shots. A man on the steps of the building begins to read from a large sheet of paper, his voice straining to be heard over the roar. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, Thaddeus stands rapt, his lips moving along with the words, his eyes shining. You listen, and the phrases are beautiful, noble. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But as the reader's voice rises, you don't hear triumph. You hear the echo of John Adams in that tiny, suffocating cabin. The only path is forward, through the fire. The crowd cheers as the reading concludes. Bonfires are lit in the streets, their smoke mingling with the haze of the July day. A group of men, drunk on patriotism and ale, attach ropes to a large stone carving of the king's coat of arms on the front of the State House, and, with a great heave, pull it crashing to the ground. The crowd roars, splintering the stone with hammers and carrying off the pieces as trophies. It is chaos, it is celebration, and it is terrifying. "Come," Thaddeus says, his voice hoarse with cheering. "I want you to meet someone." He navigates you through the jubilant mob to a slightly less frantic corner where a group of men are gathered around a barrel of cider. They are all like Thaddeus, young, well-dressed, their faces glowing with righteous fire. "Gentlemen," Thaddeus proclaims, "this is my cousin, Nancy Murphy, newly arrived from the belly of the beast." Quote, the men greet you with charming bows. They speak of liberty and tyranny, of strategy and sacrifice. They toast the new United States of America. Thaddeus is in his glory, debating points of organization, his arguments as impassioned and confident as any you heard through that cabin door. He is a true patriot, and his charm is a powerful tool, winning nods and agreements from all around him. Later, as dusk settles and fireworks begin to pop and whistle in the darkening sky, you find a moment of quiet with him on the steps of a closed bookshop. "They're so certain," you say, your voice barely a whisper. "Of course," Thaddeus replies, his smile unwavering. "The cause is just, Nancy. The path is clear." "Is it?" you ask, the words tumbling out before you can stop them. "On the ship, when Mr. Adams and Mr. Dickinson were arguing, Mr. Dickinson spoke of the cost. He asked what would happen to the common man, the artisan, the weaver. You look down at your own hands, resting in your lap. They feel useless here, skilled only in a craft that seems frivolous in a world of cannons and declarations. He said their blood will be real." Thaddeus's smile softens, becoming patronizing. He places his hand over yours. "That is the talk of a man who lacks courage, cousin. Of course there is a cost. Freedom is never free. But it is a price we must be willing to pay. Men like Dickinson see only the obstacles. Men like us," he says, squeezing your hand, "we see the glorious future those obstacles protect." Quote, he believes it. He believes every word. He looks at the bonfires and sees the dawn of a new age. You look at the same flames and see houses burning. The whispers you heard on the ship are no longer whispers. They are the roar of a crowd, the clang of a bell, the crash of falling stone. The revolution is here, and you are standing in the middle of it. A clever woman who feels anything but. An insecure soul terrified that the beautiful, dangerous pattern being woven all around you is one that can only end in blood. His words hang in the air between you, a flimsy curtain between his bright, burning world and your shattered one. The last of the fireworks bursts high above the State House, a shower of gold and crimson that briefly illuminates his earnest face before plunging you both back into the smoky twilight. The crowd has thinned now, the most fervent celebrants having moved on to taverns or to gather around the still smoldering bonfires. What's left is a sense of aftermath. The cobblestones are littered with pamphlets and the debris of celebration. The air, once electric, now just feels thick and used up. "Let's head back," you murmur, pulling your hand from his. The warmth of his touch, once reassuring, now feels like the heat of a fever. He sees glorious futures. You see the cost. He hears a call to arms. You hear Dickinson's weary question, "What of the weaver?" Quote, Thaddeus agrees. Though his energy is undimmed, he walks with a bounce in his step, humming a patriotic tune under his breath. He points out a tavern where the windows are brightly lit, songs spilling from the open door. "They'll be singing till dawn," he says with a grin. You nod, but your eyes are drawn to the houses across the street, dark and silent, their windows like vacant eyes. Who are the people in there? Are they huddled in the dark, too afraid to light a candle, praying this patriotic fever breaks before it consumes them all? The euphoria of the 4th, so vibrant and deafening, does not last. It evaporates in the oppressive July heat, leaving behind a sticky residue of anxiety. The next morning, the city wakes with a hangover. The State House bell is silent. The streets smell of stale beer and ash. The men who pulled down the king's arms are gone, but the empty, broken space where it once stood seems more menacing than the symbol itself. It is a void, a question mark carved in stone. Thaddeus is busy. He spends his days in coffee houses and meeting rooms with his new comrades, immersed in the grand architecture of revolution. He talks of forming committees, securing supply lines, and drafting articles for the new army. He comes back to your boarding house room each evening with his collar wilted from the humidity, but his eyes bright with purpose, bringing you news as if it were a bouquet of flowers. "We've commissioned a new rifle, far superior to the British Brown Bess," he'll announce. Or, "General Washington is moving his headquarters. A brilliant strategic maneuver." Quote, you nod and try to muster the appropriate enthusiasm, but you are adrift. While he builds a new nation in theory, you walk its streets in fact. And what you see terrifies you. The city is a loom strung with frayed nerves. You watch two women at the market arguing over the price of flour, their voices sharp with desperation. One of them finally walks away, empty-handed, her face a mask of grim resignation. You see a printer's boy dashing through the street, a stack of freshly printed broadsides clutched under his arm, and a man snatches one, reads it, then spits on the ground and crumples the paper in his fist. For every cheer, there is a muttered curse. For every face alight with hope, there are two etched with fear. One afternoon, seeking refuge from both the heat and Thaddeus's relentless optimism, you find yourself on a narrow street behind the market. The rhythmic clatter of a machine draws you closer. A familiar, comforting sound. It comes from an open workshop, and you pause in the doorway, peering into the ink-scented gloom. It's a print shop. Two shirtless men, their bodies slick with sweat, work a large wooden press with a steady, powerful rhythm. A third man, his fingers stained black, quickly sets type into a frame, his movements precise and economical. He works with the same focused intensity you bring to your loom. Piles of paper are everywhere. On a long table, hundreds of copies of the Declaration are stacked, the ink still giving off its sharp, chemical smell. This is it. This is the source. The very words that have turned the world upside down are being manufactured right here, sheet by painstaking sheet. It is not a divine pronouncement from on high. It is the product of sweat, ink, and labor. It is a physical object, something that can be printed, folded, distributed, and, as you saw, crumpled and discarded. The man setting the type looks up and catches you staring. He has weary eyes, but offers a small, tight smile. "The words that will free us all, or hang us all," he says, his voice raspy. He holds up the heavy frame of type. A weighty burden, wouldn't you say? Quote, you can only nod, your throat tight. You think of the ship's captain, Ursula Richardson, her hard, practical gaze. She would understand this. This is the work of the world. The hauling of ropes, the setting of type, the weaving of cloth. It is not the grand, abstract talk of liberty that fills the coffee houses. It is the hard, thankless, dangerous work of making something real. And Captain Richardson, you suspect, knows better than anyone that the things men make can be broken. The weight of it all seems to settle in your bones. The declaration isn't just an idea anymore. It is these stacks of paper. It is the risk these men are taking. It is the fear on the woman's face at the market. It is the boarded-up shop of the Tory. That evening, Thaddeus returns later than usual. The confident fire in his eyes has been replaced by something more manic, more brittle. He doesn't bother to remove his hat. "They've landed," he says, his voice low and urgent. "The British, on Staten Island." You sit on the edge of your narrow bed, your hands clenched in your lap. The news isn't a surprise. Rumors have been swirling for days, but hearing it stated as fact makes the air in the small room feel thin and hard to breathe. "The fleet is massive, Nancy," he goes on, pacing the short length of the floor. "Hundreds of ships. They say 30,000 men, maybe more. Redcoats and Hessian mercenaries." Quote, 30,000. The number is unimaginable. It is more people than live in all of Philadelphia. It is an army of staggering, impossible power. You think of Mr. Dickinson's words, his voice strained with disbelief. Against the most powerful army on earth? It is no longer a rhetorical question. That army is now less than 100 miles away. Washington is moving to fortify Long Island, Thaddeus continues, his voice quickening with a nervous energy that he tries to pass off as excitement. "They're calling for militia from Pennsylvania to reinforce him. I'm going." The words hit you like a physical blow. Going? Going where? Quote, "To New York, of course. To fight." He stops his pacing and looks at you, his expression one of disbelief, as if you just asked him why the sun rises. "This is it. This is the moment. This is what we've been preparing for. We must hold New York. If we lose the city." He trails off, unable to voice the consequence. He sees a glorious battle, a chance for heroism. You see a charnel house. You see him so charming and full of life, facing a line of 30,000 professional soldiers. The pattern you see being woven is one of red coats and blood, not glory. Your insecurity, a constant, quiet hum beneath the surface, becomes a screaming siren in your mind. You, the weaver who sees how things connect, can see exactly how this thread gets cut short. "Thaddeus, no," you whisper, the words barely audible. "You can't. You're not a soldier." Quote, his face hardens. The soft, patronizing smile is gone, replaced by a patriot's stern conviction. "We are all soldiers now, Nancy. The time for debate is over. The time for choosing a side is over." The declaration made sure of that. He gestures vaguely toward the window, toward the city outside. There is no turning back. It's what Adam said, isn't it? The only path is forward, through the fire. He is quoting the very man whose furious, impassioned voice has haunted you for weeks. But Thaddeus hears only the call to glory, not the promise of incineration. He doesn't understand that for some, for the weavers and the farmers and the artisans, the fire doesn't purify. It just burns. The weight of independence, which the printer called a weighty burden, suddenly feels like a millstone around your neck, pulling you down into the dark, cold water of a future you can see all too clearly. And Thaddeus, your charming, beloved cousin, is walking willingly into the heart of the flames. "You can't," you repeat, and this time your voice is stronger, laced with a desperation that surprises you both. "Thaddeus, listen to yourself. You're a debater, a pamphleteer. You rally men with words. What do you know of rifles and bayonets? Of marching for days with no food? They will kill you." Quote, the accusation hangs in the humid air. Kill. The word is ugly and final. Thaddeus flinches, but his resolve hardens into something sharp and unfamiliar. "And what would you have me do, Nancy? Hide in this room while others fight for the very ideals I claim to champion? Cower like a Tory?" He spits the word Tory as if it's poison on his tongue. "My words mean nothing if I won't back them with my life. This is not a choice. It is a duty." His charming face, the one you have known and loved your whole life, is now a mask of righteous certainty. He is a stranger to you, a convert to a new and terrible religion. You see now that the argument you overheard on the ship was not just about politics. It was a schism of the soul, and it has claimed your cousin. He sees glory. You see a grave. The division is no longer across a corridor or across a city. It has cleaved your own small family in two. He leaves the next morning at dawn. There is no grand farewell, no tearful embrace. He is one of dozens of young men gathering in the street, their faces a mixture of fear and bravado, clumsily hoisting new muskets onto their shoulders. He gives you a quick, distracted hug, his mind already miles away, on the road to New York. "Be safe, cousin," he says. But it's an afterthought. He turns and is swallowed by the crowd of amateur soldiers, just another thread in a coarse, doomed tapestry. You stand in the doorway of the boarding house, watching until the last of them has disappeared around the corner, leaving you utterly and completely alone. In the days that follow, Philadelphia becomes a city holding its breath. The news from New York is grim, a steady drumbeat of defeat. Washington's army is routed on Long Island. The city of New York falls to the British. The proud Continental Army, the one Thaddeus so eagerly joined, is in a full, desperate retreat across New Jersey. With every dispatch, the patriotic fervor on the streets sours into paranoia and accusation. The enemy is no longer just an army hundreds of miles away. It is the neighbor who stays silent during toasts to Congress, the merchant who still prices his goods in shillings, the friend who looks away when the militia patrols march past. The city you walk through is at war with itself. One afternoon, you see a crowd gathered around a man who has been stripped to the waist, his skin glistening with warm tar and a thick coat of feathers. His crime, someone shouts, was drinking a toast to the king. His wife and children stand on the edge of the mob, the woman silent with shock, the children weeping in confusion. You see the faces in the crowd, the furious, the gleeful, the sickened, and you turn away, your stomach churning. This is Thaddeus's glorious cause. This is the fire he walked into. Your money is running low. The small purse you brought from Boston is nearly empty, and the cost of everything, from bread to lamp oil, rises daily. You need to work. You are a weaver, and a good one, but who is buying fine cloth when the world is coming apart? Still, you have to try. You spend a day going from one tailor's shop to another, your portfolio of patterns under your arm. Most turn you away with a weary shake of the head. In one shop, the tailor, a portly man with nervous eyes, looks at your patterns and then at you, his gaze lingering. "You're not from here," he states, not asking. "I arrived from Boston a few weeks ago," you answer. His eyes narrow. "With the delegates?" Quote, "The question is a blade. The city is a web of rumors and suspicions, and you are an unattached woman with a Boston accent. You are an anomaly, and anomalies are dangerous." You stammer a denial and flee the shop, his suspicious stare following you out the door. Feeling defeated, you find yourself wandering toward the docks. The forest of masts against the sky is a familiar sight, a painful reminder of your voyage. It is a place of arrivals and departures, and you feel trapped between the two. The air is thick with the smell of tar and hemp and brackish river water. Men shout orders, barrels roll down gangplanks, and the work of the port continues, indifferent to the political chaos consuming the city. This world of labor and transit feels more real, more honest than the coffee houses filled with righteous talk. And then you see her. At the end of a bustling pier, directing the careful unloading of crates from a handsome merchant brig, is Captain Ursula Richardson. She looks exactly as you remember, solid, commanding, a fixed point in a swirling world. She wears the same practical boots and jacket, and her weathered face is set in a look of concentration. She moves with an economy and purpose that makes the frantic energy of the city seem foolish and wasteful. While patriots pull down statues, she is unloading cargo, doing the actual work that keeps the world running. Your first instinct is to turn and run, to melt back into the anonymity of the city, but your feet are rooted to the spot. A part of you, the part that is tired of feeling insecure and afraid, is drawn to her strength, to her absolute certainty. She finishes speaking to a burly foreman, turns, and her eyes scan the pier. They pass over you, then snap back, locking onto your face with immediate recognition. There is no surprise in her expression. It is as if she has been expecting you. She walks toward you, her stride purposeful. The noisy chaos of the dock seems to recede, the world shrinking to the space between the two of you. "Miss Murphy," she says. Her voice is the same as you remember, low, steady, carrying an authority that chills the skin. "I wondered if I might see you again. Philadelphia does not seem to suit you." "Captain," you manage, your voice a dry whisper. "It is a city suffering from a fever," she continues, her stormy eyes taking in the street beyond the pier, the distant sound of an angry shout. "A fever of ideas. They believe they can build a new world with words on paper. They forget that worlds are built with wood and iron, with sweat and discipline. She looks back at you, and they forget that worlds could be unbuilt, easily. You say nothing, simply enduring the weight of her gaze. She knows. The thought is a cold certainty. She knows you are listening at that door. Your cousin, she says, her tone shifting almost imperceptibly. The charming one. I heard he ran off to join the rabble in New York. A pity. A waste of good enthusiasm. She pauses, letting the words sink in. He chose his side. The losing side. The world is not run by impassioned boys, Miss Murphy. It is run by empires. By navies. By trade. By the very things they are so eager to destroy. Quote. She takes a step closer. You can smell the faint scent of salt and tar that clings to her clothes. You are not like him. You are a weaver. You understand that things must be built correctly, with strong threads and a steady hand, or the entire pattern will unravel into chaos. You see this, she gestures again to the city, for the madness it is. It's not a question. It's a statement. She is reading you, seeing the insecurity and fear that you try so hard to hide. She is validating the very terror that Thaddeus dismissed as cowardice. For a dizzying moment, you feel a sense of relief, of being understood. This rebellion will fail, she says, her voice dropping lower, becoming conspiratorial. It is a brief, violent spasm. And when it is over, there will be an accounting. Those who fanned the flames, and those who stood by and did nothing to put them out, will both get burned. But those who helped restore order, they will be rewarded. Your heart is hammering. This is it, the reason she has sought you out. The conversation is no longer about fevers or politics. It is about a choice. I don't know what you mean, you lie, your voice thin. A flicker of impatience crosses her face. Don't you? You are a clever woman, Miss Murphy. You heard two of the king's most important subjects discussing treason. You are now alone in a city tearing itself apart, with a cousin who has marked your family as rebels. You are in a very precarious position. She looks out at her ship, its lines clean and strong against the murky water. There are other places to be. Safe places. Places where a skilled weaver might find work and be appreciated. Passage can be arranged. Protection can be offered. The offer hangs in the air, a lifeline and a noose all in one. Protection. Safety. A way out of this nightmare. But you know, with the weaver's instinct for knots, that this thread comes with a cost. What would you want in return? You ask, the words tasting like ash. Captain Ursula Richardson gives you the faintest ghost of a smile. It does not reach her hard, practical eyes. For now, she says, just for you to remember who your friends are. To keep your eyes open. To notice the patterns. Information has value, Miss Murphy. Especially in a time of chaos. Think on it. Quote. She holds your gaze for a moment longer, then turns without another word and strides back toward her ship, a figure of unshakable authority. You are left standing on the pier, the sounds of the city rushing back in. The choice is no longer between Thaddeus's fiery idealism and Dickinson's cautious prudence. It is between a rebellion that might consume you and a loyalty that might demand your soul. You are a loose thread she has found, and she is pulling on it, testing its strength, ready to weave you into a design of her own. You walk away from the pier, but the dock does not leave you. Its sounds and smells cling to you, mingling with the phantom scent of salt and tar from the captain's coat. Her words are a cold weight in your stomach, an anchor dragging you down. There will be an accounting. Her offer was not a lifeline. It was a hook, baited with your own fear. You stumble back into the city's labyrinthine streets, but now you see it through her eyes, a place of fever and madness, a house of cards waiting for a firm hand to knock it down. When you return to the boarding house, the usual scent of baking bread is absent. A chill has settled in the halls that has nothing to do with the changing season. You find your landlady, Mrs. Gable, in the kitchen, staring at a pitifully small pile of wood next to a cold hearth. She is a woman whose stout cheerfulness has been eroding daily, like a riverbank in a flood. Today it seems to have washed away entirely. No more credit from the woodseller, she says without looking at you. Her voice is flat, all the warmth gone from it. He says Congress's paper money is worthless. He wants coin. Who has coin anymore? Quote. She gestures to a small sack of flour on the table. That cost me twice what it did last week. The farmers won't bring their goods to market. They say the army just takes what it wants. How am I to feed my boarders? How am I to feed my children? Quote, you look at her hands, twisting a dishcloth over and over. They are chapped and red, the hands of a woman who works from before dawn until long after dusk. She is not a politician or a philosopher. She is not fired by patriotism or swayed by loyalty to a distant king. She is simply trying to keep her family alive. And the grand cause of liberty has become a vice, squeezing the life out of her. You think of Thaddeus speaking so easily of the price of freedom. He never imagined it would be paid in flour and firewood by a woman like Mrs. Goley's Gable. I have a little coin left, you offer, your voice quiet. I can help. She finally looks at you, and her eyes are filled with a weary gratitude that is more heartbreaking than tears. You are a good woman, Nancy. Your cousin, he is lucky to have you. The mention of Thaddeus is a pang of guilt. You are here, safe and warm, while he is somewhere in New Jersey, retreating from an unbeatable foe. And you are here contemplating betrayal while he is risking his life for the very cause that is starving this woman. The next few weeks bleed into one another, each day a new shade of gray. The autumn air grows crisp, and with it comes a new, sharper fear. The British are not just in New York, they are advancing. General Washington's army, they say, has all but disintegrated. They are a phantom force, ragged, hungry, and haunted, retreating through the New Jersey countryside, with the most powerful army on earth nipping at their heels. Philadelphia is no longer the heart of the revolution. It feels like its last, faltering heartbeat. Fear is a contagion. It spreads faster than any pamphlet. You see it in the way people walk, their shoulders hunched, their eyes darting about. You hear it in the whispers that replace the bold proclamations of July. Men who toasted independence now speak in low voices of reconciliation. Men who paraded in militia uniforms now stay indoors. The city is holding its breath, waiting for the sound of British drums on the other side of the Delaware River. One afternoon, you watch from your window as a group of men from the Committee of Safety stop outside the home of a wealthy merchant 2 doors down. They are not a mob, they are soberly dressed, and they carry a ledger and an official-looking document. They knock, and when the merchant answers, they inform him coolly that his property is being sequestered for the war effort, a consequence of his known loyalist sympathies. There is no shouting, no violence, just the quiet, orderly process of ruin. The merchant's wife appears at his shoulder, her face pale with shock. They stand helplessly on their own doorstep as the men begin carrying furniture into the street. It is, you realize, far more terrifying than the rage of a mob. This is the new order, the one Thaddeus championed, and it can strip a man of his life's work with the stroke of a pen. Captain Richardson's words echo in your mind. The world is not run by impassioned boys. You turn away from the window, your hands trembling. Your own meager belongings feel precarious. Your status as an unattached woman from Boston a mark against you. The city is eating itself, and Ursula Richardson has offered you a seat on the last boat leaving the island. All she asks for is information, for you to keep your eyes open. To notice the patterns. You are already doing that. It is your nature. The thought is a venomous serpent, coiling in your gut. A few nights later, there is a knock at the door. It is not the firm, authoritative rap of the committee. It is a tired, hesitant sound. Mrs. Gable answers it, and you hear a man's low voice in the hall. You step out of your room, your weaver's curiosity a familiar, unwelcome tug. A man stands in the entryway, leaning heavily on a musket that seems too big for him. He is caked in mud, his face gaunt, with the haunted, hollowed-out eyes of someone who has seen too much. He is one of the boys who marched off with Thaddeus, though he looks like an old man now. "Mrs. Gable?" he says, his voice raspy with exhaustion. I served with your husband in the 3rd Pennsylvania." A terrible silence descends on the narrow hall. Mrs. Gable's hand flies to her mouth, her eyes wide with a dawning, animal terror. She knows. Before he says another word, she knows. "There was a skirmish," the young soldier says, his gaze fixed on the floorboards, unable to meet her eyes. "At Fort Washington. The Hessians. They didn't take many prisoners." He swallows hard, the sound loud in the stillness. "He was a brave man, ma'am. He didn't run. He trails off, but he doesn't need to finish." The words hang in the air, brutal and irrevocable. Mr. Gable is not coming home. He will not see his children grow. He will not sit by the fire that his wife cannot afford to light. He has paid the price of freedom. Mrs. Gable makes a sound, a low, guttural noise of pure anguish that seems torn from the very depths of her soul. She collapses, not fainting, but folding in on herself as if her bones have dissolved. The soldier, a boy sent to deliver a message of death, can only stand there, helpless and shaking, his duty done. You rush forward, kneeling beside her, wrapping your arms around her shuddering shoulders. You hold her as she weeps, her body racked with dry, silent sobs of a grief too profound for tears. You look up at the young soldier, and in his face you see it all. The defeat, the horror, the utter disillusionment. He is not a hero returning from a glorious cause. He is a ghost, haunted by the real blood of real men. That night, you sit by the window in your cold, dark room. Mrs. Gable's grief is a palpable presence in the house, a suffocating weight on the air. The ideals of liberty and the pursuit of happiness feel like a cruel joke, obscene mockeries in the face of such raw, personal devastation. You stare out at the sleeping city, at the dark water of the Delaware River at the end of the street. You can just make out the shape of Ursula Richardson's brig, a single lantern burning on its mast like a watchful eye. A safe place. Passage. Protection. The price of freedom is a widow's howl in a dark hallway. It is the hollow eyes of a boy soldier. It is the quiet, orderly theft of a man's home. It is a kitchen with no bread and a hearth with no fire. You see the pattern now, with horrifying clarity. It is not the beautiful, intricate tapestry of a new nation that Thaddeus imagined. It is a burial shroud, woven from threads of fear, starvation, and loss. And Captain Richardson is offering you a way to cut yourself free. You have only to decide what part of yourself you are willing to leave behind in the weave. The world outside your window is a tapestry of shadows and silence, but in your mind, the loom never stops. The shuttle flies back and forth, weaving the threads of the last few days into a dark and intricate pattern. You see the gaunt face of the boy soldier, a gray thread of disillusionment. You see Mrs. Gable's collapsed form, a black thread of pure grief. You see the committeemen on the merchant's doorstep, a cold, rigid thread of merciless order. And against it all, you see the single, steady light from Captain Richardson's ship, a gleaming silver thread of temptation, offering to cut you out of the cloth altogether. For what? For becoming a thread in her own design. The morning comes, cold and pale. The house is a tomb. Mrs. Gable has locked herself in her room with her children, and the silence from behind her door is more profound than any weeping. There is no work for her, no work for you. The city is seizing up, its economic gears grinding to a halt, rusted by fear and scarcity. But people cannot simply stop. A city, you realize, is not a government or an army. It is a million small, desperate acts of survival performed every day. It is a weave, and even under immense strain, its threads still struggle to hold together. You have to see it, not just as a frightened passenger, but as a weaver. You need to understand the material you are working with. You pull on your cloak, the air sharp enough to sting your cheeks, and step out into the street. Philadelphia in winter is a study in privation. The vibrant colors of summer have leached away, leaving behind the stark monochrome of brick, bare trees, and wood smoke that stings the eyes. But you look past the broad strokes and focus on the threads, on the small details Thaddeus never saw. You see it in the clothing. The fine silks and imported woolens of July have vanished, replaced by homespun linsey woolsey. It's a fabric you know intimately, the coarse, uneven yarn, the plain, sturdy weave. It is the uniform of the boycott, a garment of defiance. On the ship, it was an idea Mr. Adams championed. Here, on the backs of women shivering at a public well, it is a cold reality. You see a group of women gathered on a corner, not gossiping, but engaged in a spinning bee, their wheels humming a quiet chorus of rebellion. Their fingers are chapped, their faces grimly determined. They are not debating independence in a fine hall. They are spinning it into existence, 1 yard of rough thread at a time, clothing an army, clothing a nation, with nothing but their own labor. They are the warp of this revolution, the strong, unseen threads holding the entire chaotic pattern together. You stop at the market, a place that was once a riot of abundance and is now a landscape of tense negotiation. You watch Mrs. Gable's woodseller arguing with a farmer. He has a cart full of potatoes but refuses to sell them for the paper money the woodseller offers. "It won't buy salt," the farmer says, his voice low and angry. "It won't buy medicine. It's paper, and my children can't eat paper." A woman nearby, her shawl pulled tight around a hollow-cheeked child, overhears. "And my children can't eat your potatoes if you hoard them, you miser," she cries out, her voice cracking with desperation. Others join in, a chorus of angry, frightened women. They are not a mob, not yet. They are a community on the brink, the threads of neighborly trust fraying one by one. You see how the grand abstract crisis of a new currency becomes a brutal choice between starving now or starving later. You feel the ghost of John Dickinson's question in the icy air. What of the farmer, the artisan? They are here, and they are turning on each other. To earn a few precious coins, you take your needle and your weaver's skill to the one trade that never ceases: mending. People may not buy new cloth, but they will pay to keep what they have from falling apart. It is quiet, humble work, but it gives you a unique vantage. It takes you past the front doors and into the kitchens and parlors of the city. You become a fleeting, nearly invisible presence, a woman hunched over a torn shirt or a frayed hem, listening. Your work brings you to the home of Mr. Alistair Finch, one of the impassioned young gentlemen Thaddeus introduced you to on that fiery 4th of July. He had been the most vocal, his face glowing as he toasted the new United States. His house is in one of the finer parts of the city, and though its drapes are drawn, you can see it has been spared the hardships afflicting Mrs. Gable's boarding house. You are there to return a mended waistcoat, a fine garment of blue wool. A weary-looking house servant lets you in and leaves you to wait in a cold, formal parlor. The house is quiet, but then you hear voices from an adjoining room, the study. The door is ajar. It is the same situation as the ship, the same temptation to listen. But this time it is not idle curiosity. It is the instinct of a weaver feeling for a knot, for a disruption in the pattern. You are not just Nancy Murphy, insecure and adrift. You are a woman who has been offered a hook by Captain Richardson, and you are beginning to understand the value of bait. Utterly unsustainable, Mr. Finch is saying, his voice stripped of its patriotic fervor and laced with a merchant's bitter anxiety. Washington's army is a ghost. The British will be in this city by Christmas. And what will we have to show for it? A stack of worthless paper and a city in ruins. They are paying in gold, Alistair, a second voice says, lower and more cautious. British gold. For the quinine, they have hundreds of men sick with fever in the New York camps. Quote, "Quinine, the medicine that farmer at the market couldn't buy. Your finger's still on the mended waistcoat. The thread you just stitched into the wool feels suddenly coarse and dirty. It's a risk," Finch frets. "If the committee finds out." "The committee is too busy seizing the furniture of fools who toast the king in public," the second voice scoffs. "They don't have the wits to track a real business transaction. We label the crates as tallow candles and send them downriver at night. The sea serpent is waiting in the bay. Her captain is a practical man. He cares for coin, not causes." Quote, "Your breath catches. You know that pragmatic tone. You can almost smell the salt and tar. It can't be, can it? But of course it can. The world is run by trade. Captain Richardson wouldn't be sitting in the bay for weeks just waiting for the rebellion to collapse. She would be an active part of it, greasing the wheels of its destruction." Finch lets out a long sigh. "It feels like treason." "Treason is a matter of timing," the other man says coolly. "In a month it will be called good business sense. It's survival, Alistair. The glorious cause is lost. Now we must save ourselves. Are you in or are you out?" Quote, there is a long pause. You imagine Mr. Finch, the patriot, weighing his fiery words from July against a bag of British gold. You know what his answer will be. You can feel the pattern shifting, the blue thread of his patriotism being snipped to make way for a glittering, golden one. You cannot stay. You cannot let them find you there. Quietly, you place the mended waistcoat on a chair in the parlor. You don't need to be paid. Getting out of this house is payment enough. You slip back to the front door, your heart a frantic shuttle in your chest, and let yourself out into the cold street, pulling the door silently closed behind you. You walk for a long time, with no destination. You hold a new secret. Not the philosophical debate of great men, but a grubby, specific conspiracy. A patriot, a hero of the cause in your cousin's eyes, is selling medicine to the enemy while his countrymen die of the very same sickness. He is loading his treason onto a ship captained by the very woman who offered you protection. The web is no longer an abstraction. You have blundered right into its center, and you can feel the vibrations of the spider on every strand. The secret is a heavy, dangerous thing. It is information. It has value. You could go to the Committee of Safety. You picture their cold eyes, their ledger books. You would become a witness, a tool in their ruthless justice. They would use you and discard you. And Mr. Finch and his friends would surely have friends of their own. You would be a loose thread, easily cut. Or you could do nothing. You could hold this secret in your belly like a shard of glass, praying it doesn't cut you to pieces. Or you could go to the docks. You could walk up the gangplank of the sea serpent and find its captain. You could prove to her that you are not like your cousin, that you are a weaver who understands how the world truly works, that you have found a pattern she might be interested in. You have something to trade, not for a cause, not for a king, but for the one thing that feels real anymore, a chance to survive. You stand on a corner as the winter twilight bleeds across the sky, and you feel the weight of the choice, a weaver holding the shuttle, deciding which thread comes next. You stand there on that windswept corner, a ghost in the gathering dark, the city's myriad paths branching before you. One leads to the Committee of Safety, to a cold, righteous justice that could shatter you as easily as the men you would betray. Another leads back to your room, to a suffocating silence, to doing nothing while the world collapses. And a third path leads down to the river, to the sea serpent, to a single burning lantern that promises safety at the price of your own soul. The shuttle is in your hand, but you don't move. You can't. Your feet, your very will, are frozen by the sheer, crushing weight of the decision. For days you exist in this state of paralysis. You mend shirts and patch trousers for a few coins, your fingers moving with a skill your mind no longer possesses. You listen to Mrs. Gable's quiet, vacant grief. You watch the city brace for the end. The news is all of retreat. Washington's army, they say, is gone, melted away into the frozen mud of New Jersey. The British, under General Howe, are camped just across the river. They are so close you imagine you can feel the ground vibrate with the mass of them. Congress has fled Philadelphia, escaping to Baltimore. The heart of the revolution has stopped beating, and now there is only the waiting. The waiting is the worst part. It's a cold, heavy blanket that smothers all sound. The city is a tomb. People speak in whispers, if they speak at all. Every knock on the door is the arrival of the redcoats. Every distant shout is the beginning of the occupation. Captain Richardson's words feel less like a temptation and more like a prophecy. This rebellion will fail. It is a brief, violent spasm. You look at the drawn, fearful faces around you, and you know she is right. The pattern is clear. It is an unraveling. The day before Christmas is the coldest yet. A bitter wind sweeps down the Delaware, rattling windows and finding every crack in the walls of the boarding house. You huddle in the kitchen with Mrs. Gable and her children, sharing a thin stew and the last of the bread. There is no talk of the holiday. There is only the cold and the waiting. Then, on the day after Christmas, a rumor arrives. It is a frantic, impossible whisper, carried on the wind like a stray seed. It catches first in the taverns along the waterfront, then flits through the market. A boy runs past your window shouting something that is snatched away by the wind. You catch only one word, Hessians. It has to be a lie, a cruel joke to twist the knife of despair. You dismiss it. But the rumor persists. It grows bolder. By midday, men are gathering on street corners, not in fear, but in a state of agitated confusion. They say Washington crossed the Delaware. In the middle of the night, in a storm of snow and sleet. They say he surprised the Hessian garrison at Trenton. It's madness. An army of ghosts cannot cross a frozen river. A defeated general does not attack. The pattern does not allow for it. You tell yourself it's a desperate fiction spun by the committee to stave off a total collapse. You think of Captain Richardson, of her hard, practical sense. She would laugh at such a story. But as you walk through the streets, the feeling is different. The air, once heavy and stagnant with dread, is now crackling with a wild, uncertain energy. Hope is a more dangerous fever than despair, and it is beginning to spread. 2 days later, the official dispatch arrives. A rider, his horse lathered and steaming in the frigid air, delivers the news to the State House. A man appears on the steps and reads the proclamation. His voice, strong and clear in the cold, rings across the yard. The Continental Army, under the command of General George Washington, did indeed cross the Delaware River on Christmas night. They marched 9 miles through a blizzard to Trenton. They fell upon the Hessian garrison at dawn. After a short, sharp battle, the entire force, nearly 1,000 men, surrendered. Their commander was killed. The Americans suffered fewer than a dozen casualties. A moment of stunned silence hangs over the crowd, and then a sound begins. It is not the wild, chaotic roar of the 4th of July. It is something deeper, more incredulous, a wave of sound that builds and builds until the entire city seems to vibrate with it. Men throw their hats in the air. Strangers embrace, weeping and laughing at the same time. For the first time in months, the State House bell begins to ring, its clear, defiant peal cutting through the winter air. You stand at the edge of the crowd, the sound washing over you. The pattern is broken. A single, impossible knot has been tied, disrupting the entire weave of defeat. This was not supposed to happen. The losing side does not win. You look toward the docks, toward the place where the sea serpent is anchored. Captain Richardson's world, so solid and certain, suddenly has a crack in it. And in that crack, a terrifying, beautiful light is shining. You think of Thaddeus. For the first time in weeks, you allow yourself to imagine him not dead in a ditch, but alive, his face chapped by the cold, his eyes bright with this impossible victory. The city is transformed. The heavy blanket of fear has been thrown off. The change is in 100 small details. The wood seller is suddenly willing to accept paper money again, just for a day. The women at the spinning bee on the corner are working with a fierce, joyful energy, their wheels humming a song of victory. Even Mrs. Gable manages a small, watery smile, the first you have seen since the soldier came to her door. The victory doesn't bring her husband back. It doesn't fill her larder, but it gives her something else, a sense that his death was not for nothing. But the war is not over. The British are still there, just across the river, a massive and wounded beast. Everyone knows they will retaliate. The week between Trenton and the New Year is one of tense, breathless anticipation. The city is alive again, but it's the life of a cornered animal, its fear sharpened into a fighting edge. Then, just as the tension becomes unbearable, more news arrives. Another rider, another dispatch. General Cornwallis had marched his army south to crush Washington, trapping the Americans at Trenton. But overnight, Washington had done it again. He'd slipped away, leaving his campfires burning to deceive the British. He'd marched his men around the main enemy force and attacked the British garrison at Princeton. Another victory. Another 1,000 enemy soldiers killed, wounded, or captured. The Continental Army had not just survived, it had turned and mauled its pursuer, Princeton. The word is a thunderclap. Trenton could have been a fluke, a lucky gamble. Princeton is a pattern. 2 victories in 10 days. The army of ghosts is real, and it is led by a general who can walk through walls and conjure victories out of snow and darkness. The narrative of inevitable defeat, the one so carefully woven by Richardson, by fear, by reality itself, lies in tatters. A few days later, the proof of these victories marches into Philadelphia. The captured Hessian soldiers, the fearsome mercenaries whose name alone was enough to cause panic, are paraded through the streets. You join the crowds lining Market Street to see them. You expect monsters, giants in towering hats, the soulless killers from patriot pamphlets. The men who shuffle past are anything but. They are exhausted, filthy, and miserable. They are young boys with frightened eyes, and old men with grizzled, weary faces. Their blue uniforms are torn and mud-stained. Their famous discipline is gone, replaced by a shambling, deep-boned weariness. They look less like the agents of a tyrant, and more like farmers who took a wrong turn and ended up on the wrong side of the world. As they pass, the crowd, which had gathered to jeer, falls largely silent. You see not hatred on the faces of the Philadelphians, but a kind of stunned pity. These are the cogs in the great machine of empire. They are the weaver's thread, not the weaver. You watch them, and you think of the offer from Captain Richardson. The world is run by empires, by navies. She had spoken of it as an immutable fact, a law of nature. But the men shuffling past you in defeat are the instruments of that empire, and they have been broken by a ragged army of rebels. You look at their faces and you don't feel triumph. You feel a profound and unsettling connection. They are caught in this loom just as you are, just as Mr. Gable was, just as Alistair Finch is, selling his soul for a bag of British gold. You walk away from the parade, the image of the Hessians' faces burned into your mind. The choice you have to make has not vanished, but it has changed shape. The path to the sea serpent no longer seems like the only sane option. The rebellion is no longer a guaranteed failure. It is something new, something unpredictable and frighteningly alive. The pattern is not set. It is being woven, right now, with every skirmish, with every act of courage and betrayal, with every spinning wheel and every secret meeting. The tide has turned, and you are no longer sure which shore you are standing on. You are still a clever, insecure weaver, but you realize now that holding a secret is not the same as holding power. Power lies in deciding what to do with it. The shuttle is still in your hand, and for the first time, you feel the strength to choose a thread of your own. You don't go to the committee. Their justice feels as cold and unforgiving as the winter wind. You don't go to the docks. Captain Richardson's offer of safety now feels like a gilded cage, and you've seen enough of those. You choose the third path, the one that is yours alone. You will find the army. You will find Thaddeus. You will see for yourself the true nature of this frayed, blood-soaked, and impossibly resilient rebellion. You will follow the thread of your cousin's life until it either leads you to him, or you find its bitter end. The victories at Trenton and Princeton buy the Revolution time, but they do not win the war. The following year, 1777, is a brutal education. The British, furious and reinforced, march on Philadelphia itself. You hear the far-off thunder of cannons at a place called Brandywine Creek, a sound that shakes the windows of your boarding house. You see the broken remnants of Washington's army limp through the city after another defeat at Germantown. The patriotic fervor of the previous year is gone, replaced by a grim, dogged scramble for survival. When General Howe's army marches into Philadelphia in September, the city capitulates with a weary sigh. The redcoats are no longer a distant threat. They are a daily presence, their polished boots echoing on the same cobblestones where you watch the King's arms fall. Some citizens welcome them with relief. Others, like Alistair Finch, do so with the quiet satisfaction of a bet well placed. For you, and for Mrs. Gable, it is the final straw. To stay is to live under the thumb of the very power that made her a widow. And so, you pack your few belongings, pool your last coins, and join the river of refugees fleeing the occupied city. You are not a patriot fleeing tyranny. You are simply a woman with nowhere else to go, following the only thing that offers a shred of purpose: the tattered flag of the Continental Army, which has retreated into the hills to the northwest to make its winter camp. The place is called a Valley Forge. The name itself sounds like a trial, a place where metal is beaten into shape through fire and force. The journey is a miserable trek, through frozen mud and over roads choked with carts, livestock, and other displaced families. But nothing prepares you for the sight of the encampment itself. It is not a camp. It is a city of misery, hastily carved into a bleak, windswept plateau. The first thing that hits you is the smell, a wretched combination of damp, rotting straw, sickness, chimney smoke, and the foul stench of the slaughtering fields. The air is thick with it, a miasma you can taste. And then you see the men. They are everywhere, thousands of them, emerging from the woods like specters. They are not the proud soldiers of pamphlets. They are wraiths in rags. Many have no coats to ward off the biting wind. Some have wrapped their feet in burlap sacks, leaving bloody tracks in the thin, grimy snow. They are gaunt, their faces hollowed out by hunger and disease, but in their eyes you see a stubborn, burning light that defies the landscape of their suffering. You and Mrs. Gable find a place in the sprawling, chaotic collection of huts and tents that house the camp followers. It is a small world unto itself, a microcosm of the society the army has left behind, filled with wives, children, laundresses, merchants, and artisans, all clinging to the army's periphery. Here, your skills are not just valuable, they are vital. You find work immediately, mending torn uniforms and darning threadbare socks. You sit for hours in a crowded tent, your fingers numb with cold, your needle flashing in the dim light of a tallow candle, stitching together the fabric of this ghost army. Your work is a passport. It takes you deep into the heart of the camp. You see the rows of crude log huts the soldiers have built for themselves, chinked with mud and clay. Smoke pours from their makeshift chimneys, a sign of life in the frozen wasteland. You see men huddled around sputtering fires, their shoulders shaking with cold, sharing a single biscuit. You hear the constant hacking cough of the lung fever that sweeps through the camp. You see the burial details, a daily, grim procession, their work made harder by the frozen ground. This is the reality behind the ringing bells of Trenton. This is the cost of liberty, paid in flesh and bone. Yet amidst the suffering, you find a resilience that baffles you. You see soldiers drilling on the frozen parade ground, their movements clumsy in their rags, their curses turning to white vapor in the air. A stern, foreign-looking man with a booming voice, a Prussian baron, someone whispers, named von Steuben, shouts at them in a mixture of German, French, and broken English, and miraculously, they begin to move like soldiers. Their shambling lines straighten, their awkward handling of muskets becomes crisp and uniform. You are a weaver, and you recognize what he is doing. He is taking these frayed individual threads and twisting them together, spinning them into a cord of immense strength. You ask about Thaddeus. You ask every man whose coat you mend, every soldier you pass. You describe his charming smile, his fervent way of speaking. Some shake their heads. Others offer vague recollections of a man like that in a different brigade. The army is a vast, disorganized creature, and finding one man in its belly is like finding a single thread in a mountain of flax. But the search gives you purpose. It keeps you moving, keeps you looking, keeps you from succumbing to the despair that hangs in the very air. One afternoon, while delivering a small stack of mended shirts to a captain's hut, you see him, General Washington. He is on horseback, accompanied by a few aides, not parading, but simply riding through the camp. He is a tall man, and he sits his horse with an easy, commanding grace. But it is his face that captures you. It is a mask of grim determination. There is no glory in it, no triumph. It is the face of a man bearing an impossible weight. His gaze sweeps over the wretched huts, the shivering soldiers, the whole panorama of suffering, and he seems to take it all into himself. He is not above his men, he is among them, his presence a silent testament that he endures this trial with them. He stops his horse near a group of soldiers attempting to move a stuck cannon carriage from the frozen mud. They are failing, their cries of exertion lost in the wind. The general dismounts. He says nothing. He simply puts his shoulder to the heavy wheel alongside the mud-caked privates. The men, stunned to see their commander beside them, find a new reserve of strength. With a great, unified heave, the wheel turns, and the cannon lurches free. Washington gives a quiet nod, wipes the mud from his hands, and remounts his horse, riding on without a backward glance. You stand frozen, the mended shirts clutched in your arms. You have seen power. You saw it in the fury of John Adams, in the icy authority of Ursula Richardson, in the cold legality of the Committee of Safety. But this is something different. It is not the power to command, but the power to inspire. It is strength born not from a title, but from a shared burden. He is the warp thread of this entire endeavor, the strong central cord around which everything else is woven. If he breaks, the whole thing will tear apart. And you understand, with a clarity that frightens you, that he will not break. The secret you carry of Alistair Finch and his treasonous quinine burns in your mind. Here, men are dying of fevers, for want of the very medicine that patriots sold for British gold. Here, Washington is putting his own shoulder to a wheel, sharing the dirt and grime of his men. The contrast is so stark it makes you physically ill. Your cousin, Thaddeus, called men like Finch patriots. But you see now that patriotism is not in the words you say. It is in the work you do, in the burdens you are willing to share. It is in the needle you push through a frozen piece of cloth. It is in the shoulder you put to a cannon wheel in the mud. That night, you lie on your thin straw pallet, the wind howling outside the tent. The sounds of the camp are a familiar lullaby now. The coughing, the distant cry of a sentry, the low murmur of men singing a sad song around a dying fire. You are cold. You are hungry. You are surrounded by death and despair. But for the first time since you left Boston, you are not insecure. You are not adrift. You know where you are. You are a weaver at Valley Forge. You are a single humble thread. But you are part of a pattern now. A pattern of suffering, yes, but also of incredible, impossible, incandescent strength. And you would not trade your place in it for all the safety, in Ursula Richardson's world. The fire in you, once a flickering ember of doubt, has been banked and tended into a slow, steady burn of resolve. The spring of 1778 arrives not with a rush of warmth, but reluctantly, in small, grudging concessions. The snow recedes, revealing a landscape of churned mud and the graves of thousands. The wind loses some of its bite, but sickness still clings to the camp like a damp shroud. Yet something has changed. The army that survived the winter is not the same one that staggered into these hills. It is harder, leaner, and bound by an alliance forged in shared misery. You see it in the little things. A grizzled corporal from Virginia, a man who once looked at your Boston accent with suspicion, now saves you a place near the fire and calls you Nance, as if he's known you his whole life. You watch a group of men from Rhode Island, including several black soldiers, fighting for the freedom they have yet to be granted, sharing their meager rations with a new recruit from Pennsylvania. They are no longer just men from disparate colonies. They are soldiers of the Continental Army. The camp at Valley Forge, this crucible of suffering, has burned away their regional squabbles, leaving behind something new, something American. Your days are a rhythm of mending. You are known now as one of the best seamstresses in the camp. Captains and privates alike bring you their tattered hopes in the form of uniforms, and you stitch them back together. Your hands are perpetually sore, your fingers calloused and pricked, but there is a deep satisfaction in the work. With every stitch you are fighting the decay, holding the army together one thread at a time. And with every person you meet, you ask the same question. Have you seen my cousin? Thaddeus Edwards. He speaks with great passion. He has a charming smile. The answer is always a shake of the head, a sympathetic glance, but you do not stop asking. The question itself has become an act of faith. Then, in late April, a new kind of rumor begins to circulate. It is different from the usual camp gossip about troop movements or spoiled beef. This one travels in excited whispers, carried from hut to hut by men whose eyes shine with a light that is not just from fever. The word is France. They say the French have signed a treaty. They say ships and soldiers and gold are coming. You hear it first from a young lieutenant whose coat you are patching. They say Franklin worked his magic in Paris, he tells you, his voice low and conspiratorial. A full military alliance. You look up from your work, your needle poised in midair. You have heard such rumors before, glimmers of hope that always faded. It is best not to rely on rumors, Lieutenant, you say, your voice more steady than you feel. He grins, a flash of white in his gaunt face. This one feels different, Mistress Murphy. This one feels like the sun coming up. But the veterans are wary. Heard that before, grumbles the old Virginian corporal, spitting a stream of tobacco juice near the fire. The French will promise you the world and sell you the dirt under your feet. I'll believe it when I see a French flag flying next to our own. Quote, the camp holds its breath for a week. The tension is a wire stretched to its breaking point. Then, on a bright morning in early May, the order comes down. The entire army is to assemble on the grand parade ground. Something is happening. You join the crowd of camp followers on the edge of the field, Mrs. Gable beside you, her hand clutching yours. The army that marches onto the field is a testament to the Baron's work. The men move in disciplined ranks, their ragged uniforms unable to conceal their newfound precision. They form up, a vast sea of men stretching across the plateau. A cannon shot rings out, silencing the thousand-strong crowd. General Washington rides to the center of the formation, flanked by his generals. He holds a sheaf of papers in his hand. His voice, when he speaks, is strong and clear, carrying across the field on the spring breeze. It is with the greatest pleasure, he begins, that I inform the army of the conclusion of a treaty of amity and commerce, and of alliance, between France and these United States. Quote, a collective gasp ripples through the ranks. He is not finished. His Most Christian Majesty the King of France, Washington continues, his voice rising, has seen fit to recognize the independence of our nation and has pledged his full military support in our cause against the tyranny of Great Britain. Quote, for a heartbeat, there is only silence. It is a silence so profound you can hear the flapping of the flag in the wind. Then, the sound begins. It is not a cheer. It is a roar, a raw, primal explosion of joy and relief from 10,000 throats at once. It is the sound of hope made real. Men weep openly, their discipline forgotten as they throw their arms around each other. Hats fly into the air. The Virginian corporal beside you lets out a whoop so loud it cracks his voice, his cynicism washed away in the tidal wave of elation. Washington raises his hand, and the cannons begin to fire a 13-gun salute. After each shot, the infantry fires a running volley down the line, a feu de joie, a firing of joy that crackles and echoes through the hills. It is the sound of a world turned upside down. The rebellion is no longer a desperate, lonely struggle. It has allies. The great empire of France has wagered its might on this army of ghosts. Captain Ursula Richardson's cold, pragmatic world, a world run by the singular power of the British Navy, has just been proven false. She thought she was playing on the only board that mattered, but a new, more powerful piece has just entered the game. Standing there, amidst the thunder of cannons and the raw joy of men reborn, the secret of Alistair Finch's treason twists in your gut like a poisoned blade. It is no longer just a grubby secret about a greedy merchant. It is a betrayal of this, of the men who died in the winter darkness, of the general who put his shoulder to the wheel. And now it is a betrayal of a king and a nation, an ocean away, who have put their faith in this cause. You can't hold it any longer. To remain silent now would be to choose a side, and your side is here, on this muddy field, among these ragged, glorious men. That afternoon, you seek out a man named Nathaniel Greene. He is a general, Washington's new quartermaster, but he is not a man who puts on airs. He is a Quaker from Rhode Island, a man of business who has taken on the Herculean task of supplying the army. You have seen him, a stout man with a limp and a perpetually weary but intelligent face, arguing with suppliers and inspecting barrels of salted pork with his own hands. He is a man who understands the brutal logistics of war, the real-world connection between a crate of medicine and a soldier's life. He is a man who would understand. You find him outside his headquarters, a simple farmhouse, overseeing the unloading of new wagons. You wait, your heart hammering against your ribs until he turns and his eyes, sharp and assessing, land on you. "Mistress Murphy," he says with a nod of recognition, "your needlework is the talk of my officers. What can I do for you?" Quote, "General," you begin, your voice barely a whisper, "I must speak with you. I have information. It concerns the enemy." His expression becomes instantly serious. He gestures you into the farmhouse, away from the prying ears of the soldiers. Inside, the room is a chaotic mess of maps, ledgers, and shipping manifests. It is the nerve center of the Army's survival. "Speak freely," he says, his gaze never leaving your face. And so you do. The words tumble out. The story you overheard in the quiet parlor of Alistair Finch. You tell him about the quinine, labeled as tallow candles. You speak of the British gold. And you give him the name of the ship, the one waiting in the bay, and its captain. "The Sea Serpent," you say, the words feeling like poison on your tongue. "Captain Ursula Richardson." Quote, General Greene listens without interruption, his face an unreadable mask. When you finish, the silence in the room is heavy. You have done it. You have taken your thread of knowledge and woven it into this vast, dangerous tapestry. You don't know if he believes you. You are just a woman, a weaver, with a story. He walks to the large map tacked to the wall, a map of the coastline from Delaware to New York. He taps a finger on the Delaware Bay. "The Sea Serpent," he murmurs to himself. "We have had reports of a neutral brig moving suspiciously in these waters for months." He turns back to you, and for the first time you see a flicker of something other than weariness in his eyes. It is the cold, hard light of a predator. "You have done the Army a great service, Mistress Murphy. A very great service indeed. This information will not be wasted." You leave his headquarters, stepping back out into the noise and celebration of the camp. A weight has been lifted from you, but it is replaced by a cold, thrilling fear. You have acted. You have set events in motion that you cannot control. You have made an enemy of a woman who knows your face, a woman who knows the power of a long memory and a sharp blade. But as you walk back towards your tent, you see the French flag, a gift from the general, being hoisted on a pole in the center of the camp. It flies beside the new American flag, the one with its circle of 13 stars. They are two different patterns, two different nations, but here, in this valley of death and rebirth, they fly together. The long road to victory is still fraught with peril, but for the first time you can see the destination. And, with a certainty that settles deep in your bones, that you have chosen the right path. The sounds of jubilation follow you back through the camp, but they seem distant, as if coming from across a great valley. Your own world has become intensely quiet, focused on the steady rhythm of your own breathing and the soft crunch of your shoes on the damp earth. You have unburdened yourself of a terrible secret, only to take on the heavier weight of its consequences. You passed a thread to a general, and now he will weave it into a pattern of war, a pattern that will surely involve capture, imprisonment, or death. For Alistair Finch, for Ursula Richardson, and perhaps for you. You pass a group of soldiers roaring the lyrics to Yankee Doodle, no longer an insult but an anthem of defiant pride. They are drunk on hope and the extra ration of rum the general ordered for the celebration. Their faces, so recently gaunt with despair, are flushed and alive. You see it, this fragile, flickering thing they call a nation. It is not the grand brick state house or the words on a piece of paper. It is this sudden, fierce, collective belief in the morning, even after the longest and darkest of nights. It is a thing born of shared suffering, a bond sealed by the blood in the snow. And it is so terribly fragile. A single defeat, a broken promise from France, a winter as harsh as the last, and this roaring bonfire of hope could be reduced to cold ash. You reach the small tent you share with Mrs. Gable. She is inside, sitting on her pallet, her hands finally still in her lap. The profound grief that has been her constant companion has not vanished, but it has made room for something else. A flicker of light in her weary eyes. "They say the French king is sending his own navy," she says, her voice soft with wonder. "A navy to fight their navy." You nod, sitting down on your own thin mattress. "That is what they say." "Perhaps." She trails off, looking down at her chapped hands. "Perhaps Thomas did not die for nothing." Her words land with the simple, devastating weight of truth. That is the bargain, isn't it? The question that hangs over every grave in this valley. You think of Mr. Gable, of the thousands of others buried in this frozen ground. Their sacrifices are the currency that bought this moment of joy. Their deaths are the ink with which this new treaty is written. Your betrayal of Finch and Richardson suddenly feels less like an act of vengeance and more like an act of preservation. You did it to protect the meaning of their deaths, to ensure men like Finch could not profit from the very suffering that consecrated this ground. It was a choice to honor the pattern of sacrifice, not the pattern of greed. The camp slowly quiets as evening deepens into night. The boisterous songs fade into softer murmurs. The roaring fires burn down to glowing embers. The great, exhausted body of the army settles into a sleep deeper and more peaceful than any it has known in months. You lie on your back, staring up at the canvas roof of the tent. The cool, damp air smells of wood smoke and the new green life of spring. You are no longer just an observer, a weaver of cloth. You are a weaver of consequence. You have taken a dark thread of treason and woven it directly into the fabric of this war. You think of Captain Richardson, of her hard, practical eyes and her unshakable belief in the world as it was. A world run by empires and trade, where power was measured in cannons and coin. She was not wrong about that world. But she failed to see this one being born. A world where a general would put his shoulder to a muddy wheel, where an army of ghosts could cross a frozen river, where hope itself could become a weapon of war. She saw the threads of power, but she did not see the human spirit that held them all together. You wonder if she is out there now, on the deck of the Sea Serpent, staring at the same stars, feeling the tide of the world turn against her. You are not the same woman who stepped off her ship, insecure and adrift. You are not the same woman who listened in terror to the arguments of great men. You have seen what those arguments cost. You have touched the real fabric of this revolution, and it is not the fine silk of philosophical debate, but the coarse, blood-stained, and unbreakable linsey-woolsey of human endurance. Your place in this is no longer a question. Your hands, calloused from the needle, are your answer. You mend the coats, you darn the socks, you listen, you watch. You do the small, necessary work that keeps the whole from unraveling, just as Mrs. Summit Gable does, just as the Virginian corporal and the young lieutenant do. This is what it means to build a nation, not with grand proclamations, but with 1,000 small acts of faith and labor. Day after grim, hopeful day, the road ahead is a dark and unmapped territory. The British Army is a wounded lion, and it will be more ferocious than ever. There will be more battles, more defeats, more winters of starvation. This one victory, this one alliance, is not an end to the suffering. It is merely a promise that the suffering will not be in vain. The nation is a newborn, gasping its first breaths in a brutal world, its survival anything but certain. A quiet resolve settles over you, as peaceful and profound as the slumbering camp. You are a part of this now. Your thread is in the weave. Whatever comes next, the wrath of Captain Richardson, the chaos of the battlefield, the long, weary path to a peace that still seems unimaginable, you will face it. You will not run, you will not hide, you will stay, and you will mend, and you will watch this fragile, impossible nation fight for its life. Through the quiet of the tent, you can almost hear a whisper, an echo of the words that started it all. Not angry now, but solemn, a vow spoken into the darkness. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You will never forget. You will never forget the cost, the sacrifice, the terrible, beautiful price of those words. You close your eyes, the sounds of the sleeping army a gentle lullaby. The image of the two flags flying together, American and French, fills your mind. It is a new pattern, one the world has never seen. You drift off to sleep, not dreaming of the past or fearing the present, but thinking only of a new dawn, a new nation, and the uncertain, unwritten future you have chosen to help weave.